You no trouble. Me, fifth element. Supreme being. Me, protect you.
Hello. Oh boy, this is a long one. For starters, I needed some black elastic, so instead of buying some, I decided to dye my own. I figured out how much I would need by putting on the pants that I would be wearing for this costume, a thrifted pair of gold leggings. Sadly, they did not have pockets, but beggars can't be choosers. And I mapped out where the elastic would be going on the knees, doing one and then using that as a template for the other. With this specific pair of leggings, I didn't need to mark the center middle line, as luckily it already had one. But to mark the knee area, I used a yellow marker, a fabric marker, close enough to gold but not enough to be too bold to actually show through the black. When I finished that, my water was done boiling and I had the approximate measurements that I needed. So I came in with some white elastic and the black red dye. I put it into the water and then, as per the instructions on the package, agitated it a little bit and then left it to boil for a while, mixing it every 5 minutes or so, again as per the package instructions. I then took them out of their black bath, how Halloween-y of me, and ran them under both hot water and then cold water. As the center line was already there, I used it as my reference point to where I would be sewing the smaller elastic. As you may have been able to see, I did add a chunk of thin elastic and a bunch of wider elastic. The thinner is going to go down the leg as where I currently am, and also wrapping it a little bit on the underside of the ankle area. Being sure to backstitch both legs. And also the entire circumference of my knee and calf area that I had previously mapped out. while the wider elastic is meant for the belted area. For the faux belt, I should say, as this isn't going to be keeping anything up, but more for decoration. I'm sewing it approximately in half and onto the side seam of the pants. And one end will have a different side of the release buckle. One having, for lack of better terms, the male end and the other having the female. Now you might have been able to use black fabric paint, at least for the thinner one, but I wanted to add more durability to this, so I wanted to sew it on. Now that was the easy part. This is the part that took me a very long time and a very large amount of brain cells to figure out. The orange buckle belt that she has on, basically like kind of bodysuit almost. Using multiple reference photos and the actual movie, I made a mock-up simply out of dollar store tape and taped it directly onto my body. Well, not onto my body, but onto my clothing that was on my body. And then I cut it off myself, being very careful. Ow! Okay. At first, it was very confusing until I put it back on and made connection points, or connection marks. When I was able to put it together off my body, I used acrylic paint and the flat end of a drill bit to place the circle onto the belt. I might have been able to just cut these out as I went, willy-nilly, but this way I could go back and forth and fix them if need be, and some fixes were need be. I then cut those out with a mix of a sharp X-Acto knife and scissors. Realizing that I had forgotten some areas, went back in with the paint. Waited for it to dry down, and then back in with the knives. Placing that off to the side, I knew that I had wanted to make this out of silicone, but I also knew that silicone can't cure on an angle, at least not the silicone that I was using. I know there are some, but those are mostly different colors, not clear. This was also my first time using silicone, so let's learn together. I was also testing acrylic paint to see if it could actually be mixed in and not affect the curing process negatively. I placed some non-drying plasticine clay down as a border, and then put the fabric inside, and then poured the silicone over top and allowed it to cure. Well, it's still a little tacky, but it's keeping its shape. I don't know how I feel about it. I could sew through this, but there will always be a hole there that has a chance of ripping. It wasn't the best piece of silicone in existence, but it was a good enough test to test out the next thing I need to do, seeing if the silicone will stick to previously cured silicone. I made another border with the same plasticine and then placed the piece in, silicone down, and then poured another round of the new silicone, adding in white to see the stark differences. Oh, that's weird. and it's tacky. I don't know how I feel about this. Now this did technically work, but it wasn't one solid piece. If I stretched it, you could tell that it wasn't super sturdy. It's very bubbly. And because I would be using so much silicone and it might be on the heavy side, I didn't want to take the chance. Placed the taped up mock-up back on myself and realized I wanted to give it a little bit more of the crotch area, I guess. So I cut it up and added some more tape there. Alright, the only upside to dealing with dollar store tape that literally doesn't stick to anything is the fact that it also does not stick to itself. Then made sure I could still place it down flat and then carried it over to a bigger space. Now this part gets messy, so the preparation I did for it was insanely necessary, but honestly I wish I had done more. I placed it down and taped the mock-up down flat, and then placed a crappy but transparent drop sheet, one you may actually recognize from a certain body bake video I've posted. But I digress. I also taped the sheet down as best as I could. I think I've been fairly vocal on this channel about not really believing in single-use plastics. Like, yes, they exist. I believe in them in that way, but I don't allow them to exist in my life, basically by using them again. This is one of the ways that I use single-use plastic to make them not single-use. For the harder plastic, if it's mostly flat or angled, I knew I could use it for this. Cutting it up lengthwise to get a bunch of little strips and then using a straight edge to prop it up, and then hot glue to glue it into place. So many pieces. All around the perimeter of the belt. This is going to be the walls that keep the silicone in. Being sure to leave about 1/2 inch overlap between two pieces and then gluing into that overlap so I don't get any leaks, or very limited at least. Yes, this was a lot of work, and yes, it did take a lot of time. Luckily though, it used up a lot, if not all, of my single-use plastic. The plastic actually ripped off the hot glue fairly easily, as well as most of the hot glue ripping off of the sheet as well, making it actually reusable as well. Some of it, not all, but I have since reused quite a bit of it already as it came off in mostly strips. When I had the perimeter done though, I brought back that belt in a longer size than I had before, and then painted it with a mix of orange acrylic paint and also a fabric medium. As I had stated, I didn't like that you could see the black design through the silicone. This was my fix. How great is it that my modeling clay is gluten-free? I'll remember that next time I start eating it. As for the circles I'd cut out, I'm going to be using modeling clay for these. Grabbing a big chunk, rolling it out as thick as I need the circle to be, and then using a PVC pipe to cut out the shape. That genuinely hurt. Okay. You could use a cookie cutter for this, but I happen to have a PVC pipe that was basically the exact size that I needed. Now you may be wondering, why didn't you just use the plasticine modeling clay for the perimeter of the belt? Well, I tried, and because of what I assume the same reason to be that the silicone and hot glue were not sticking to the plastic sheet, being whatever science is behind that, the modeling clay also didn't hold its shape, and tragedy struck for the first time I tried this. Anyways, back to the current instead of the past. I'm placing each one on top of their respective holes, I guess is the way to say it. Don't worry, I will be hot gluing these down. I'm not showing you every clip of me hot gluing them down because honestly this video is already so long and it would be very repetitive, but just in case you didn't believe me, here's a few of them. As I said, the modeling clay didn't hold the walls enough, but I figured the ends would have less weight to them, so I used it to sandwich the belt pieces in, putting one on the bottom, putting the belt piece in, and then putting one on the top, because hot glue would actually change the, I guess, consistency of them, how they bend and how they take the sewing. But I need to close them somehow, to be sure that there was no leaks.
There are so many hot glue spiderwebs.
I poured a bit of water into a container and added it to one leg of the project that I had the most concerns about, and it was good to go. I had water in here to test something out with that side, and I grabbed this off the counter not realizing it still had water in it. So some water flew out and landed directly in here, and only there. I don't even understand how that happened, but here we are. I am genuinely terrified. I measured these silicone parts equally, and A and B, and then mixed them very well, as I thought that might have been my problem to start on the last batch and why it didn't cure properly. And then I went even a step further, and once those had been completely mixed together, I added the orange paint in, and then mixed that even more thoroughly. And then simply pour, being sure to pour under the belts, over them as well. This was a little bit messy. And some areas did have a little bit of leakage. Ironically, not the ones that I was mostly afraid would be the problem children, but I quickly fixed them before they became an actual issue. Throwback to the other issue. Ugh. When I tell you that I am genuinely so afraid to do this, I am stalling. It has been hours. If it's gonna be cured, it'll be cured by now, but I am... This is the second time I've done this.
Walk out the door, you see someone that you know, and they ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine.
I don't understand.
And if it didn't work this time, I'm gonna have to go another approach. And I don't want to do that because this is the approach I wanted to do. I mean... Now enjoy some peel porn. And for some reason, this clip reminded me of Austin Powers. I guess the silicone suction was stronger than the amount of hot glue I put on the bottom of the clay, so they did pop off a little bit with the silicone, but I just popped them out fairly easily. And initially I had the plan of using my sewing machine for this actual sewing, but the silicone would barely fit in, and I would like to use this in the future. I don't want the machine to be angry with me, so hand sewing it is. But first I used a orange spray paint to paint the very black buckle, both sides. I put the silicone belt on, used safety pins to piece the pieces together that belong together, and started on my sewing excursion, sewing both the mommy and daddy pieces to their silicone pieces. And then clicking them together so there was no confusion. Then sewing the last piece to the middle of the stomach area. I hope that makes sense. I did it to both sides even though I only showed it with one, but if you want to see it again, just replay the last 10-15 seconds and you're good to go. Voila! I removed it from my person and then began the last step of cleaning up the edges. And also, as you could have possibly seen during the sewing process, I also cut in more holes, so I cleaned up those areas as well. But that is it for today's video, and I do hope you guys enjoy, and I'll see you in the next one. Happy Halloween, guys. Bye bye.